Guys in the Dark.
My grandmother, who's actually my great aunt, but she's like a grandmother to me, was kidnapped when she was 8 years old. It's a long story, but here it goes. She was sent off to babysit her 6-year-old cousin at the theater. Yeah, an 8-year-old babysitting a 6-year-old. That was definitely a great idea. And they started watching the Sunday cartoons. The plan was that they would meet their parents outside of the theater when the movie finishes. About an hour or so into the showing, a man came into the theater, walked straight to her row. He grabbed her by the wrist, where she was wearing a locket, and told her it was time to go. She got up with him. They started walking out of the theater. About 50 or 60 years ago, roughly, the time this has happened. They used to have attendants at the door of the movie theater. When walking by the attendant, there just happened to be a manager standing there also. She was afraid that he would hurt her if she said anything, but she decided to just take a chance. Walking by the two men, she said, "Where are we going? You're not my father." He squeezed her locket hard, and then suddenly ran, pulling her with him. The two men gave chase. He made it to the parking lot, when she started to fight back. She stopped running, and was trying to pull her arm off. The man, now realizing they had no chance with her, threw her into the gutter, jumped into his car, and then he sped off. But not before someone was able to write down the license plate number. When she was questioned by the police, she wasn't really able to tell them much. She gave him his description, which she said the closest person that she can describe as looking slightly like him was George Costanza, and told them that he remembered he was wearing a green tie and had an accent. The police, having possessed the license plate by now, decided to pay him a visit. They had went to the house. The door was answered by a boy of about 11 years old. The police decided to walk in, found a man fitting the description. He had denied everything until they searched his closet. Bald on the floor was the same green tie that my grandmother had described to them. They took him in. He confessed to everything. This guy had a family, 2 kids, a wife. He was a Russian immigrant to come to work in a small Midwest town factory. What would he have even done with her if he had successfully kidnapped her? My grandmother says that she never got the answer to that. After she had chosen him in a lineup, her family was told this wasn't his first kidnapping attempt, or even his second, or his 5th. It so happens that it was his 11th attempt. He first started out with a girl of about 18. Then every time he failed, he went younger and younger, until he reached my 8-year-old, at the time grandmother. He was tried at court, and yet again was released after 6 months in prison. He went on to kidnap 2 more girls after my grandmother. When telling us the story, she showed us the scar of where he clenched down on her locket. When I was 14, I was waiting for the bus at the end of my driveway, and this pickup truck pulls up off the road onto the driveway. The driver kept waving me closer to the cab and held up a map book. At first, he wouldn't roll down the windows, but he did and said that he needed directions to wherever. I really can't remember. I went closer to the window. I didn't realize what was happening until he reached across and attempted to grab me by my hair. I dropped my bag and ran for the house while he sped off. Woke my mom up, and she flipped out. Went to the window to look out, and surprise, surprise, the truck was sitting across the street, and we could see the dude looking up at the house, which made me flip out. I assumed that he saw my mom looking, because he left a rubber, getting out of there. My mom had called the cops, and a patrolman showed up, took the information on the truck. Me and my mom went to the police station. I talked to a detective, and they did a composite sketch of the guy. The detective left to take a call, and came back saying that they pulled someone over, and wanted me to ID the driver. They put me in the back of an unmarked car with tinted windows, drove me past a guy who was being questioned outside of his truck not too far from my home. It was him, and I had my first panic attack in my life. I thought for sure that he would see me. They charged him with attempted kidnapping and something else that I really don't remember. It made all the local newspapers, but my mother wouldn't let me read them because they wanted me to testify, and I guess they didn't want whatever there was to, I don't know, spoil my testimony. They pulled him over, by the way, in front of an elementary school, where he was just idling. I ended up testifying for the DA via videotaped interview. He was acquitted because he claimed that he was deaf or something. I never quite understood how that even worked. Found out later that he had been arrested for similar things and some sex crimes, but this was before the sex offender registry. Also found out why they didn't want me to read the newspapers when they searched his truck. They had found a rope, duct tape, a bunch of sex toys, Vaseline, and an axe. It certainly would have been a coincidence. But my family filed a restraining order against him, and apparently he was ordered to stay away from schools. It wrecked me for a while. I had trouble going to school because I kept having panic attacks. I kept thinking that I saw his truck everywhere that I went. I kept hiding from windows and the like. I had a bunch of nightmares. And then I got diagnosed with PTSD. For a long time, I had trouble getting past what might have happened if I hadn't gotten away from him. I was 6. My brother was 5 years old. And our mom decided one time that she wasn't going to give us back to my dad. So we packed some of our things into a couple small suitcases and a couple black garbage bags. It was very spontaneous. One moment we were watching TV, and then we had less than an hour to decide what our possessions would be going with us. We were gone for about 9 months, living in an awesome house with a spiral staircase in Central Oregon. Child Services found us when my mom registered us for school. So my brother and I were pulled out of class on the first day of school by police officers and taken to a conference room with 2 other officers, the school counselor and the principal. We were questioned about why we never contacted the police. Well, because we were children who had little idea of what was really going on. We moved to a new house with our mom and got new skateboards. We were resistant to cooperate because they were very clear that we wouldn't see our mom anymore and that they were taking us back to Seattle. We didn't want to live with our dad. He didn't know how to cook. So my brother had snapped, started screaming and running around the room. One of the officers had grabbed him, which transformed me into a very defensive big sister. I started kicking the officer holding my brother. My brother got a hold of the officer's baton and hit the guy with it. At this point, everyone had enough of my shit, and my brother, who happened to be a 5-year-old boy. We were both handcuffed, and I was picked up by my ankles and carried outside. Up until that point, I was doing a great deal of kicking. We were then manually transported through the school, right as classes were being released for lunch. I was wearing a blue cotton dress, and a 30-year-old, I vividly remember being hauled over through the school by my ankles, and the embarrassment of knowing my underwear was showing. We were put into the back of the police car, like criminals, and driven to Child Services in Seattle. No one didn't stop for food or bathroom breaks. My brother and I both pissed our clothes in the car. We were so hungry when we got dropped off at the office building, but all they had was cocoa. We were never scared with our mom. Our needs were met, and we were pretty happy. The way we were treated, though. The whole rescue was just dehumanizing. The courts awarded my dad full custody and a restraining order between us and our mother until we were 18 years old. My father was a neglectful parent, as well as a physically abusive one. I can't even count the number of times he was in court for child abuse. He used to brag about how all they would do is make him take an anger management course, and how well he could bullshit his way through all of them. Not my own, but my cousin was abducted. She lives in Mexico. One day, as she was walking home after being dropped off by the school bus, she was pulled into a van by a man wearing bandanas over their face. They tied her up, placed a hood over her head. They drove for a long time, according to her. She was taken to a barn and then was left there. Inside the barn, there were other young women tied up. She would ask what was going on and where they were, but the women couldn't answer her. She somehow got loose from her rope, started to look for an escape route. She found a window and saw that the sun was setting. She broke the window with a chair. She urged the other ones to come with, but they were too scared to leave. My cousin had left them, and she ran nonstop to the nearest town. She stayed off the roads in case they were looking for her. Luckily, she found a phone in the town, called her family. She's safe now, but she could never remember where the location of the barn was. She still feels pretty guilty about it all. I was around 10 or 11 and was touched regularly by a neighbor. This lasted over years, and it was not in one event. This neighbor had a country home that he had rented from one of his friends. One of his friends was also a pedophile. The two of them had arranged that I would be taken up to the country house. The friend picked me up on a Sunday morning and drove me there. I was excited to go because I heard so much about this country home. I remember driving around with this guy. The next memory I had was waking up in a large camping trailer. At the base of the bed was a tripod, and to my right was the driver. Here is where I lose everything. I get out of bed, and I'm disoriented. I get dressed and exit the trailer and start to walk down the street. I knock on a random door at a random house. The person that answers the door is one of the elementary school teachers from my community. At that very same moment, the driver pulls up in front of the door, yells over to me that FD, the neighbor, was looking for me, and that I had to go back to go see him. I returned to the car. The driver took me back to the home in the city. I feel that if I did not knock at that door, the outcome could have been much different. The driver could not do anything because now somehow he had been seen. Although I know of others who have been molested by the same neighbor, no one believes the story. To this day, the neighbor's good name is definitely protected. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe, like, and hit the bell for notifications on future videos and become a stalker of the night. And I'll see you next time.